Okay, I'm out at the garage and I just finished up the first kind of major project to be done in the garage. So let me show you. Mary's very own seed starting greenhouse. So I'm going to show you in a 2-video series, this being the first, how I built it, how you could build it too. This is how I did it. There's probably a billion different ways to do it. I tried to use materials that we had on hand and keep things somewhat cheap. But I think it turned out really, really nice. So I hope you get something out of this video. It took a lot to make. These videos take a ton of work. So if you would please just hit the subscribe and like button for us, and we'll keep doing them. So I'm going to build this greenhouse on 5¼ inch by roughly 10½ inch skids that I had laying around. You could use a variety of different foundations, but with this build I really wanted to use stuff that we had laying around already, and this made for a really good foundation. So I took that front slope off with the chainsaw. That was probably the best way to make that cut, and then I'm just burning the bottoms here and applying a thick layer of linseed oil to them. So this is actually the bottom of the skid that you're seeing here, and then I'll flip them over and we'll start the layout, which is going to be basically 2 header boards that I put together so I could match the thickness of a 2x4 at 3½ inches. You can see on the right there, those are my boards that are going to go across. So I'm cutting a half lap joint in here and cut the outline first, and then go between 1/8 to 1/4 inch. Keep the cut straightish. It's a lot of cutting, a lot of sawdust, but enjoy the sound here in a second. So I think I ended up taking about 2 inches down into that timber, and then I'm taking, I guess it would be 1.5 inches off of this, but I'm going to make that measurement after I drop that board in, so I make sure to get it exactly right. And then we'll cut the other half of this half lap joint into that header board basically. So here I am setting the saw depth, and basically going to do the same thing that I did on the other half lap, and then these will mate up nicely if everything goes to plan. It's important on these half lap cuts to keep your saw down all the way through the cut so that you're getting the right depth all the way through. It becomes a real pain when you don't do that, and you've got to like chisel it out or Polish plane it out or get funky with the saw in a way you probably shouldn't have done it. But yeah, this was a lot of cuts here. So it is kind of fun to watch though. So this greenhouse overall is going to be 8x8. It's got about roughly 6-foot walls from the bottom of the skids up to the top plate, and then the peak in the center of the 612 pitch roof is roughly, it's a little bit over 8 feet. It's like 8'2". So I've got all my half laps cut there. I just showed you one, but I did all 4, or I did, I think 2 of them here, and then I'm going to do the next 2. But that all went in really nice, and then just gonna check square, make sure my layout is right, so that when I lay out the next one, it's correct. I find it's always better to have your layout close, even if it doesn't need to be yet, because it's just going to make everything better and easier in the future. So here I've done the other two joints, got those all in, and then we'll secure those and go from there. So that the goal is to get just a flush platform all the way around in which to build the thing on. So all the weight is going to be pushing down on these, but I don't know, for posterity I threw a few spikes in there. And then for ease of just working on it in the garage, I'm putting these casters on. We're going to take these off when we go to pull it out of the garage. I've got other stuff going on in here, and I want to be able to move it. So there we go. She rolls. So this greenhouse is mainly going to be used for starting seeds in the spring. And the major concern or thing that we need to address with it is temperature control. So to keep this warm when it gets cold, we're going to put our old little rocket wood stove in it. And we're just going to have to build a little fire out there at night probably, and then it's going to have vents on both gable ends up above, and then it'll also have roll-up sides on both sides. So here I am framing up the walls. I think these stud lengths were 63.5, if memory serves. So kind of dinky little walls, but you want to put your side walls up first and then measure for your end walls, but making sure that you have proper distance and proper layout on your side walls while doing so. Had some leftover flashing tape from our garage project, so I figured I'd throw that on this flat part, even though we're going to be putting a 2x4 on top of that all the way across. Shouldn't get wet, but with that OSB in the middle too, that stuff doesn't like to get wet. So again, for posterity, just going to slap some of this stuff on. In go the walls. I like to screw them down first, nail them down later. That way you can move them if you want. And I usually wait as long as I can to nail everything in and make it so it's never going to move again. But I'm just kind of roughing everything up right now to make sure that I can move it again if I need to in a minute. So I've got a single bottom plate and a single top plate here. Reason for that is my trusses are going to fall right on every stud, so I didn't really see the need for a double top plate, plus it's just a little dinky greenhouse, so why waste the lumber was kind of my thinking on it. And that is the back wall. The door will be on the opposite side. This is actually the back of the greenhouse that we're looking at here. And now I'm kind of getting everything plumbed up a little bit better. Just, again, making sure everything is good from the ground up. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting it the whole way. So I wedged a chisel into this wall. I needed to push it back. I'm just kind of tapping that back to get a skosh more to the east, that is. Again, just putting screws in to make sure I can move it if I need to later, but at this point I'm pretty sure that that's where it needs to be. Proof. Close enough. Good enough for government work anyway. Yeah, so at that point we're looking good. I'm good to keep going up. So here we have the trusses. Thank you, Pythagorean theorem. So we need to figure out what that truss length is. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I showed my work. You're welcome, math teachers. Just to prove that you do actually use this stuff in life sometimes down the road. So girls, Anna and Elise, my nieces, pay attention in school. You may need it sometime. So we're going to do a 16-inch overhang. So we need to add that to the truss length. And then we're going to run a ridge beam in the middle, diameter of which is 1.5 inches. So half of that is 3/4. And that's what we end up with after all of the maths. So now the trick is to make, I think it was 10 of these identical. So I got the miter saw out for these just to help with the plumb cuts on the ends, and then the bird's mouth cut I did with the skill saw, and then just kind of chinked out that last little bit that you can't quite get to. So here's what I ended up with. Never done trusses like this before, so they actually, I think these are rafters technically, but it worked out really well. So I'm holding these trusses in with, I think those are 6-inch truss screws that we had left over from the garage build. We've got one coming from the bottom up and then one from the top down into that top plate as well. And then just kind of roughed in the rafters where they will be, and then knocking this ridge beam into place without banging myself on the head. And again, I'm just kind of screwing these in for now to get them where I think they should be, and then really whack them down later. So put the blockers in, I pre-measured so we get the perfect distance, and then the next set is a little bit easier maybe to do it this way, to put the blockers on first and then put them up. It's less in the air nailing, which is nice, but it comes with its own challenges too. But I kept doing it that way, so I did like it enough like that. You just have to be sure to offset the 2x4s enough. And then here are my upper supports that tie the rafters into the wall. Kind of a special cut there that's all on a 6/12 pitch. That's what I chose to use. But as long as you maintain that angle and do the math, should be good. And if you mess it up, get another piece of wood, no big deal. I ended up making that vent 2 inches wider. That was a little bit too narrow. Oh, the walls were a little bit too wide here, so I went and got a ratchet strap to pull them back together, and then I'm just kind of pulling everything square and plumbing everything up. And then here's our, I'll call it a kickboard. That's where our roll-up sides, kind of the bottom of the roll-up sides will rest against. That also provided a ton of stability to that wall, which needed it. And here's the door side. I wanted to do it this way because then I could get the perfect measurement up to top to bottom, from rafter to bottom plate at the right left to right spot, if that makes sense. So that way I could just get a board right in there, make sure it was right where it needed to be, and then mark that board exactly where I needed to make that top weird cut. Making sure to not fall on a rafter blocker or make the door like 18 inches wide on accident. So I think we ended up with about a 34-inch wide door here. And here I am demonstrating the wacky cut. intermediate skills on a skill saw, I think, to make that one. It's not that bad. Okay, just framing up this wall, tying it into the rafters. And then putting the blocking in, oop, almost lost my speed square. Putting the blocking in for the vent on this side, which will also help tie that whole wall in with the rafter and roofing system. And there we have a rough framed greenhouse. So part 2 of this video will be coming out very soon. And I will show you what we did to get it to the beautiful, majestic thing that made you hopefully click on this video. So thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you on the next one.